afternoon, everybody. I hope you're doing great this fine afternoon. I hope that you've already had lunch. Maybe you're enjoying lunch right now. So enjoy, digest, while you also digest the information. So I want to start off by thanking all of you for attending today to today's webinar. Big thank you. So going to pull up my screen right now so we can all see what I see. So as you likely know, today's webinar is going to be about retaining top talent and using performance to drive success. So a couple notes to start off. My name is Max Specht, and I'm happy to be your moderator today. I'm from Personio and love having these conversations with really great minds in the HR space. And I'm joined by one of them today, and that is Ruth Thomas, who is head of people and organizational development, also at Personio. Hey, Ruth.
Hi, Max. Happy to be here.
So we're both here today to have this conversation. And really quickly, though, I want to give an introduction to who we are. Maybe you've never heard of Personio before. Maybe you follow our newsletter for HR Insight. But I want to give you a quick introduction to who we are. And in general, Personio, we're here to improve business performance by driving excellence in people operations and strategy. And we do that as a complete HR solution for SMEs. Basically, that covers everything you could think of: onboarding, offboarding, recruitment, applicant tracking, employee information, and people data and workflows. So that's a quick introduction to who we are. But I think it's good that we get to the topic at hand today, which is basically today's agenda is talking about retention and performance as a lever for retention, because retention is kind of a huge topic for all of us right now. And basically, today we're going to be covering seeing retention in a new light, 3 key strategies, best practices, and then of course, Q&A, time for your questions. And now I will quickly call out, we have the Q&A section here on Zoom. Please feel free to pop in any of your questions. And we already have one. And will this presentation be available offline after today? Yes, indeed it will be. You'll get the full recording as well as any resources that we mentioned today in a follow-up email. So you'll get it, you can share it with friends and family and executives and all that, the full suite. So you'll get all of that after this, do not worry about it. And basically, that leads us to our conversation right now. So I'm going to pass it over to Ruth. Oh, one last thing I should mention is we also have a bonus section at the end of the webinar. I'm going to be welcoming another Personio here, Felipe, who's going to do a product demo of Personio. So that will also be recorded if you can't make it. I know it's a little 15 extra minutes, but if you can stick around, that would be amazing. We'd love to have you. He'll give a quick 15-minute run through of how it looks. And yeah, so without further ado, Ruth, I will hand it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Max. And yeah, welcome everyone. Really excited to be here today to connect with all of you. Obviously, based on role, head of people and org development, this is clearly an important topic to me. And so just really excited to be able to talk to you all today, share some insights, and as Max said, leave a really good chunk of time so we can have some conversation and answer any questions that you have. But just go ahead, I'm going to jump right in. I think goes without saying, the last 2 years have really been shaped by the pandemic. They've been turbulent both for organizations and for, more importantly, for our people and our talent. We've heard, I'm sure you've heard so much about all of the different trends and themes and buzzwords, from the great resignation or great rethink right through to hybrid working. And I'm sure you all have lessons learned on that you can share with each other today as we chat through, but that you're also have been sharing with your colleagues and with your leaders across the time. So with our time today, we're going to really focus in on specifically the topic of retention. And as Max said, it's something that we're all grappling with. I'm going to share some insights with how we're thinking about that at Personio for 2022 and beyond. I'm not saying that we have everything perfectly buttoned up. I think if anybody says that to you, they're probably lying. It's always just something from a talent perspective that we're constantly trying to understand as a HR group and decision makers. But hopefully what I can share is a different lens potentially to look at this and how you can really drive retention by investing in your performance and the development of your talent. And then just some food for thought, some ways that we've been approaching it. And as I said, jump into some questions and learn from each other as well. So that's what we're going to cover. Max, if you want to drive us on. We know that 90% of the organization, as I said, are, or not of the organization, sorry, organizations are saying that talent shortages, retention is a challenge, but more importantly, what's underneath that, right? And what's driving that. That's really where we can really make a difference and can inform our decisions as HR leaders, decision makers. We're trying to make data-based, human-centric decisions, and this data will help us do just that. So really understanding what is behind this, we can really understand career progression and people feeling the impact of that. When we think about 39% of employees feeling like their careers have been impacted in some way by the pandemic, whether that's in relation to feeling like they've missed out on promotional opportunities, feeling like working remotely is impacting their ability to have impact and be seen in the organization. And then that's compounded by the backdrop of the sense of the fact that moving externally, moving to another organization is seen potentially to be something that can be done with relative ease at this moment in time. So all of those components layered on top of each other give us the information to start to think about what can we do about this. And for my team, it's really been looking at understanding our current employee experience and how we can move the needle for our team members to help change some of this sentiment and really understand how we can help drive their progression, their performance, and give them that sense of recognition and progression that they're looking for. So what we're going to do is talk to you about 3 key strategies, relatively simple frameworks, and then share some of the kind of insights and the tactical ways that we're trying to bring that to life here at Personio. And this really is the important piece, right? I really believe that if we look at the performance and growth within our organization and take a few simple steps, we'll be able to make an impact here. Perfect. So this is my take on kind of like the holy grail, the 3 levers for retention in 2022. And the first is feed forward, and that's not a typo. That is very much intentional. I'm really thinking about how we can rethink how we approach feedback within our organizations and making sure that we're driving peak performance and supporting that progression, really by looking at making sure our feedback processes are fair, frequent, and future focused. And we're going to dive into that in a little bit more detail in just a moment. The other piece that we're looking at is making sure that we are able to give clear and agile career pathing. So mapping it out, and can your team members map out their careers within your organization? And we'll look at some simple steps to help do that as a HR team. And then finally, what we're calling power up. And for me, this is really self-driven and personalized development. So putting your team and your employees at the center of their own development and really building an ecosystem that they can engage in, where they can take ownership of their own development, and really shifting that model from the kind of push to the pull approach when we think about development and then ultimately progression within your organization. So let's dive into the first one, which is feed forward, a topic that I am extremely passionate about. And when I think about this, for me, as I said earlier, it's really about ensuring you have the team have the fuel that they need to progress within the organization and to perform. So thinking about feedback as fuel, feedback as a gift, and that really starts with me with setting the intention and really people feeling like the reason we're giving feedback is to help them do better moving forward. We obviously reflect back. It helps inform the feedback. It helps us share really constructive, specific, pointed feedback, but we do that in service of enabling them to do better in the future, to grow, and to take that lessons forward. And so part of this is really thinking about how do we connect feedback to career aspirations of our employees? How do we connect it back to identified development goals that they might have, and really give feedback with a purpose and a shared understanding of why we're doing that. And that really comes down to having the frameworks in place, and then also empowering and educating your leaders to do that. The other component really for me is fairness. And actually our recent study showed that only 51% of individuals really felt that on a whole, the approach to performance within their organization was fair. And so thinking about ways that we can establish fairness within that process, equity within that process, mitigating bias within that process. And so there's some simple things that we can look at in terms of how do we define success within our organization? Have we clearly articulated expectations, whether that's a rating scale? And I'm not here to say that there's no one size fits all. Every organization will need to do something different for them, but really thinking about, have you articulated both the how and the what of somebody's performance? Have you made sure that there's shared understanding between them and their leader and their organization around what that looks like? And is everybody working with that with a shared understanding of how to interpret that and how to apply that within the organization. Some things that we found really, really helpful is definitely leaning into our leaders within the organization and ensuring they have the education and support they need to effectively evaluate performance. Also looking at feedback more holistically, peer feedback, upward feedback, and making sure that you have that 360 view. And then also thinking about ways to provide calibration, a light and agile ways where you can look across your organization and make sure that, again, there's a consistency with how performance is being evaluated. So again, not saying there's one way to do this, but there are definitely, tangible steps that you can look to implement as an organization to really ensure everybody feels that the process is fair and equitable. And then the last component of this is frequent. And you can argue when you have the other two foundational pieces in, frequency is then how you really, really amplify this. And I think for me, it's really about understanding if feedback is there to serve the employee and to help them grow, then the sooner they get that feedback, the better, right? Nobody wants to get feedback 3 months later about something that they could have changed. And so it really enables you to drive performance within your organization a lot faster. It also supports progression readiness for your team members, but it means that everybody knows where they stand and they have the opportunity to continuously improve. And I think that's what everybody wants. Everyone wants to succeed. We hire in great people into our organizations, and they need just to know what success looks like and how they're tracking towards that and how they can help move towards that and what they can do differently, what they can continue to do. And so I think really looking at your processes that you have in place, the frameworks that you have in place, the tools that you have in place, do they enable these three things? Do they really highlight the intent of feedback? Do they ensure that the feedback you're providing is fair and equitable and transparent? And then do they enable you to give feedback and encourage you to give feedback in a more frequent manner? And for me, those are the three things that we're striving for. Again, every organization will be on a different journey. And working on these things, it's constant. I don't think we ever have it perfect, but these are the three things that I and my team are striving towards and that we are leaning into at Personio to really make sure our team members have what they need to succeed. All right, so happy to jump on to the second one, which is mapping it out. And this kind of feeds back to that piece around the intention. And in order to really ensure that employees can do that and you can do that within your organization, it's really essential that they can really see themselves working in your organization. And I put 2 years from now, I think that's a common kind of benchmark, but it also goes back to the piece earlier around the ease of mobility at this point in time, right? And can your employees see themselves in another organization? If so, they at least need to be able to see themselves in your own. And that can be pretty difficult, particularly for fast-paced organizations where things are changing and there isn't necessarily formalized career frameworks or career paths. So again, this can be done in a variety of different ways, but what you're trying to do is create a level of visibility. And that can be done through a very constructive and transparent conversation between an employee and their team member in terms of where this team might be evolving, how this role might be evolving in the future as the business grows. And it could be something very formalized for larger organizations where you have, fully fledged career paths where people can see how those job families and career families unfold. And so again, I think it can look different, but the end goal is, can your team see themselves growing with you and growing with your organization? And for me, there's kind of three components that help do that. So transparent career paths, next steps, having those conversations around where this role could evolve to, or what other roles in the organization somebody might be interested in. We're also able to look at quality career conversations, and that is easier said than done. But really, again, thinking about some simple frameworks that you can put in place to create a shared language. At Personio, we have our career framework, and it's given leaders and our team members a shared language to discuss the different types of internal career moves that somebody might want to take, and then be able to understand what's next in order to make that happen, and what does that look like for them. And for many, that can include mastering the role that they're in. I think also being okay with thinking about progression differently, both thinking about kind of lateral moves in the organization, moving into different departments, diversifying your skill set, and then potentially taking the more traditional lateral route as well. So really getting holistic with how you think about career development and giving simple frameworks to your teams, to your leaders, to help them navigate that. And then I think one thing that is really important and often overlooked, but is a very simple way of documenting and clarifying what those career development steps and plans look like. You can have really fantastic conversations and then walk away and kind of say, what's next? What are those tangible actions? So I think embedding a way for those actions to be captured, to be embedded in people's goals on an ongoing basis, and become part of your one-to-one conversations as well. So you're tracking towards that. So we know that, career development progression matters. And we know that lots of people are looking for new opportunities. So the takeaway for me here is, let's make that next opportunity be within your organization, right? And think about talent in that way. And how do we create the space for them to continue to grow with your organization? Alrighty. So the final one for me, which kind of sums all of this up, is really thinking about empowerment. And for me, this is around development and thinking about, as I said, how you put the individuals at the center of their career development and their progression and performance as well. So there's three components here. First is very simply learner-centric learning, and that comes from the concept when you think about product development, right, and putting users at the center of your design. We strive to do that in our approach to learning. So you'll see here a picture of not, I was gonna say all of our Personios, but it's not all of our Personios. We've grown quite a lot since that picture was taken. But for me and my team, it's thinking about who are the personas that we're serving, who are the people that are going to be engaging with our learning and development content. And performance is not just about hitting the numbers, right? There's a journey or achieving the goal or getting that promotion. It is really around skills development, acquiring that next ability. I use the term pick and mix approach. I'm not sure if that translates outside of Ireland, but it's for anyone on the call, that kind of you can kind of build your own bag of confectionery sweets when you go to let's say in the old days when you went to the cinema, and sometimes in the corner stores, and you can create that little mix for yourself. That's the way I like to think about the offerings that my team are building. Can somebody go in and kind of build their own adventure, create their own bag of sweets, but really think about learning in a way that works for them. And this is an example just here, a little screenshot of what we're actually getting ready to launch. So you're all getting a sneak peek ahead of a lot of our Personios, but how we're thinking about leadership development for our organization and creating multiple different ways that leaders can engage with development opportunities based on their particular current position in their kind of career trajectory, their level of experience, how they want to work, remote, hybrid, and just thinking about ways that they can come together, but also learn at their own pace. So that for you is just a little snapshot of our leadership development ecosystem, and a sample of how we kind of think about creating that journey and allowing them to craft that for themselves. And the last piece here is learning by doing. And again, sometimes I think this one it's said a lot, but I think maybe in recent times kind of not given the place that it should be. But I really think, how can we embed learning in somebody's role? Classroom learning, virtual learning, experience-based sessions are awesome. Don't get me wrong. It's a lot of what I do. But I also really value being able to identify stretch opportunities, think about shadowing. Also gig opportunities is also something that within our team we're exploring at the moment. So really giving people the opportunity to actually learn by doing and stretching themselves and building that skill in real time. And that also goes back to that component about getting that real-time feedback. So for me, these three components, they're not mutually exclusive. They layer on top of each other, and they really then, for me, build that foundation that supports progression, performance, and then hopefully ultimately retention within your organization. But I think if I was to say like one thing to take away from this is just really thinking about how you can put what you're doing as a HR team already in the day-to-day of your learners, and that really will then enable engagement to thrive. So whether that is your performance practices, your feedback practices, or how you're thinking about learning, just thinking about how that can be embedded into existing habits, existing ways of working, has really enabled us to scale and embed our efforts. So I have done an awful lot of talking, but I think to leave you with my sentiment and then open it up for discussion, really, I truly believe if you invest in your talent today, then Max, if you want to click one more, it will really ensure that you have the talent that you need for the future. And I actually, when I was interviewing for this role, Hanno, our CEO, said to me, if you're in an elevator with someone and you have to explain what you do, go ahead, try and do it. And I said, my role is to make sure that the Personios of today can take advantage of the Personios of tomorrow. So when I think about retention and I think about our challenges in terms of finding the talent that we need, my lens is internally, what are we doing to make sure that the current team that we have are best positioned? And for me, these three things: feed forward, making sure that it's fair, future focused and frequent, mapping it out. Can somebody see themselves working in your organization 2 years from now? And that means can they understand where their role might evolve to, or other opportunities that they might have, and also the skills that they can acquire as they continue to work for you, because everybody wants to master and to continue to grow. And then also thinking about how you can empower them and really move away from kind of the push to the pull, and as HR and L&D leaders really being there to be consultants, to be providers, and having them drive those decisions and taking ownership of their own career. So with that, happy to wrap up our presentation with just a couple of key components to share. As Max mentioned, we're going to share some resources afterwards, but some really helpful templates that might help you think about how you structure your performance reviews. Some of the stats that we've mentioned today are in our most recent study, so you'll also get access to that. And then if you do hang on for a little bit longer at the end, you can get a sneak peek into some of our new performance features as well. So definitely we will circle back with some of those resources as a follow-up for you all.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ruth. Big digital round of applause for you. I know you can't hear it, but I'm sure people are clapping at their computers. So thank you so much for the best practices, for the talk about retention and performance as a driver. And as you mentioned, yeah, we'll be sending this recording of the resources in a follow-up email. So no need to worry about that. You can watch it again and again right before bed or first thing to start your day. It's entirely your choice. But to tackle a couple of questions we actually got in, because now we're going to move to the Q&A, which is everyone's favorite part. The first few questions were actually about the study itself. So we will be sending our latest study that we've done, and concerning the sample size, I believe, don't quote me on this, but it was around a sample of a few thousand. I think it was 5,000 employees maybe, and somewhere in the neighborhood of a few thousand HR decision makers across Europe. So we're looking at UK and Ireland, Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg. We're looking at Germany as well, Austria, Switzerland. Basically a pan-European study that is then broken down into different regions. So you'll receive that as an email after this one, so you can do some deep reading into that. But let's get to the task at hand. So the first question that I think is quite important, and that would be kind of, where do you start? So if a team was looking to revisit their performance processes right now after this webinar, because there's so much to unpack here, how would you recommend, how would you go from switching maybe from one system to another, or from nothing to something? Well, how would you start off, and how could you make it sustainable?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I think for me, it's really going back to the why, and it sounds very simple, but I think mapping out what are the foundations of what you need this process to do for you, right? And what are you trying to create? So does it stay true to your values, but also what you want feedback to be and what you believe feedback to be? And then it's about building the process from there. So for us, it's thinking about, our mantra of feedback is fuel, and then that helps drive the decisions around how do we want people to be able to give and receive feedback? When do we want them to be able to give and receive feedback? And what's the most valuable way of structuring that and approaching that and informing those decisions? So for me, it's going back to the principles of why are we doing this and what do we want to achieve? It sounds super simple, but I think we often run to functionality, right? And look and feel and all of that. But I think if we take a couple steps back and map out, it can really help us make those tough decisions around then, is this going to actually work for us? And is this something where we can be flexible, or is this actually a go, no go for us in terms of decision making? So for me, I like to start with my team, having conversations with the organization, really making sure we've got a shared understanding of what we're trying to achieve in the feedback and performance space as an organization, what we believe, our ethos and our culture. And then from there, coming up with a couple of core principles that can help inform the decisions around our approach, both to education, both to tooling, training, all those different things. But I think you have to start with those principles are really, really important. And then for me, I think the other component is data, right? Because going forward, we'll be able to make really strong decisions and be really transparent about our approach to this if we have strong data. So for me, that's the other piece in terms of what data do we need to be able to capture and review, and am I going to be able to do that? So the why is really, really important. And then I think the data to me speaks to the first component of the how that I would look at.
Awesome. Awesome. And we got so many great questions coming in here. I don't know how we're going to hit them all. We probably won't be able to, but please, if you do have questions that we don't get to today, you can always reach out to myself or Ruth on LinkedIn. Of course, we are always a resource open to hearing your questions, but we got a few questions here about frequency, which I think is a great question when people talk about performance. So how much frequency do you think needs to be adopted for, or to embed like a feed forward process, or how frequent would you recommend performance review sessions, maybe even just more generally?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think, you know, you can definitely get at the risk of this kind of always on component of people feeling like they need to give feedback for the sake of it, right? Or we've got a certain quota to hit in terms of the amount of feedback that we give and receive. And so for me, I really try to think back to what I said there and embedding it into current practices. And so at Personio, the way that we are and what we're striving for is really that it becomes part of how we work. So, you know, at the end of a project, if you've worked with someone, Max and I partnering together, that there's tangible feedback that person can give about your abilities and about how you collaborate with them. And so rather than trying to put a particular number on it, it's really thinking about in a day-to-day as you're working, what makes sense. And so we've tried to give kind of suggestions around kind of, you know, if you've delivered a presentation, if you've just closed out a particular project. Obviously, if you're in a relationship in work, so you're leading somebody, right, that's going to be embedded into your one-to-one. So we talk about kind of holding an agenda spot every week that if you meet with someone, there's always the option. It doesn't mean you give feedback every single time, but that there's a space to do that. And so I think I would steer away from trying to quantify a particular number, but actually say, think about how you can encourage people to just embed it in their day to day. And then whether you have biannual reviews, annual reviews, or quarterly reviews from a more formal performance perspective, those conversations then become a recap and a reflection of that feedback that you've gathered throughout that period. And you get to spend more time then thinking about, okay, how have you or how can you implement that feedback going forward and really focus in on development rather than using that time to just gather and discuss feedback, because that's happened, you know, throughout the cycle. So yeah, I would definitely tie it back more to the day-to-day, to the experience, and then use those more formal check-ins to really fuel recap and plan for the next steps ahead. But as Max said, happy to chat to anyone one-to-one. I think every organization's journey is very different. If you're going from once a year to quarterly to biannual, or you maybe don't have any at all, or you're getting rid of the formal ones entirely, really happy to chat to anyone because it's something I'm super passionate about and I've seen it done in a variety of different ways. So would be happy to chat more one-to-one.
Amazing. And with an eye towards time, I have one last question that I think is really good. So I want to ask it. And it's from a couple people, actually. So would you recommend a personal development budget as part of the process? And what would you do if there's no budget for a budget?
I love that. I saw that actually question saying, what do you do with Empower if there's no budget? So I think, again, for me, it's being really careful around how we think about and define development. There are lots of things that you can do without any budget. So I think that's just the first and foremost. It's thinking about ways that you can look at, you know, social learning within your organization. We have lots of people within Personio that have particular expertise and they're willing to share that with their organization. So my team are thinking about how can we put together a framework that allows people to do that. There's absolutely no cost to the organization, right? Thinking about very simple ways that you can build skills, stretch opportunities, gig opportunities, lots that you can do. So that's one thing I would just, I guess, caveat from the beginning. I think to the direct question around, do I think that development budgets are effective or that they should be part of that? Yeah, I think yes, but I think there should be some thought around how we go about it. And I think if you have a strong process where you think about what those development gaps are, and then looking internally within your organization to say, like, do we have the opportunity to fill that gap and to give someone the opportunity to learn? Or is that really specialized? And I think for me, the tech space is a great example of that. My team are not going to be helping somebody develop their coding skills, for example. And so there will always be a need for us to be able to give people the opportunity to upskill in those spaces. But there are also lots that my team can start to bring in-house, like presentation skills, right? And so I think as your organization grows and evolves, that's something that I would say should evolve with you, and your approach to development budget and how you invest in development will vary based on the scale and the expertise of your learning team and also where your organization is at that particular point in time. But I do think it has value, and I think there are some things that you want to think about around that, as I said, but I don't also think it's the be all and end all to development. In fact, I think there are far more powerful levers that we can be using.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Ruth. I'm not biased at all, but great presentation. It was amazing. But thank you so much. Big round of applause. I'm sure a lot of folks appreciated it. And now we're actually going to pivot into the next section for the next 15 minutes. Again, stick around if you'd like. You'll also get the recording and the slides. But one last time, big thank you to you, Ruth. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It was a great conversation. Glad to be part of it.
Awesome. So now I'm actually going to invite Felipe. Let's see if we can get you here. We're going to promote you to a panelist. and he'll be, oh, there he is. He's good to go. Felipe, can you hear us? Are we good?
Can you hear me now?
I think we can hear you. I think I can speak for everyone and say safely that we can hear you.
Perfect.
So I will pass it over to you now to do a quick little product demo. And thanks to everyone who's sticking around to watch.
Thank you, Max, and thank you, Ruth. A pleasure to have you all. As Max was introducing already, I will be doing a demo of how it looks in the Personio environment already, so you can get a sense of how this works and how exciting it is to see this actually going live. So let me start by sharing my screen. Max, could you enable me to share the screen, please?
Yes, you should have the permission now. Sorry about that.
Perfect. Got it.
Nice.
All right, here we go. All right, can you see it? Yep, good to go. Perfect. So I'll start sharing what the cycles look like inside of Personio. So here, what we want to do, it's handling this control over what's have been done in terms of the cycles inside of Personio. So you can actually track down what's been done, and we can forget about pursuing or asking, hey, listen, I need the performance cycle of 2017, who has it? And yeah, looking after people. Here you will have a complete control and overview of what has been done. And by that, you will have a little overview of what has been done in this cycle, as well as whether it's ongoing, it's a draft, or it has been completed already. I'll jump to create a cycle really quickly so you can see how easy it is. And in 6 quick steps, you can already have a cycle launch. So let's start with the name, pretty easy. And then a description that is going to be shown for everyone that you choose to be part of this cycle. So let's wish everyone good luck. There we go. And then we can choose the employees. So now we can do it in a more reachable way instead of going to each of the profiles of the employees to add a performance form. Now we can do it in a more faster and easier way. So we have 3 ways of doing this. Basically, you can choose all the active employees in your company, and that then gathers everyone. You can always get a quick snapshot. Another way, it's let's say it's a free way. So for example, let's say, hey, I want to launch this cycle for my managers. There's not a department for managers, so I will go with this option of a free choosing who I want. So I can do a quick search and then I start adding the people. And the third option is by the employees conditions inside of Personio, the attributes. So basically here, for example, I would say, hey, listen, I want to launch this cycle for the marketing and sales, for example. So then again, you always get a quick snapshot. And in this way, then again, we don't have to go after people sending the email, hey, did you receive it? Having a list, checking all of the names. Here it's done in just 1 click. So pretty easy to choose who is going to be involved. And then we move to what kind of reviews do we want to include in this performance cycle. And here we have a 360 view. So it's of course a compound of 4 options. You can play with it like a Lego and say, for example, I just want to have self-review and peer review, or you can, as much as you want to construct the review types. So to recap, it's 4. We have the classic manager review to his team. Then a self-review, I evaluate myself. A peer review, here we have the option of asking other people to evaluate me. And then the upward review. I want to actually review my manager directly. So for the sense of the demo, I will choose all of them. And then we go to the forms. Then again, we don't have to be doing a new form every time, or this way we can standardize and bring more transparency in the process of how are we evaluating. So you can create your own custom forms and save them as templates in Personio. In this way, the information is already stored and you don't have to restart every time all over again. And then simply, we have a drop-down menu with the forms we have created. So for example, I made it pretty easy to link: manager review, self-review. It's the self-reflection, then peer review, and upward review. I use the quick feedback form. So really easily, I already choose which form it's going to be linked to each of the review types we have. Now the due dates. This is super exciting. Actually, I've heard a lot of good feedback because this is going to save a lot of time of going chasing after people. Hey, Felipe, have you done the form already? Please remember, it's due tomorrow. Don't forget. And when you have a big team, of course, you know, this is really time consuming. So now you can set a deadline for each of the review types we have. We can set them in terms of days, weeks, or months, and that counts from the moment you launch the cycle. So for example, let's say managers, they are really busy, so we'll give them 1 month. Self-review is super easy. It should be done in 15 days. Peer review, let's say 2 weeks, just to change the way of counting. So you can see, you can use, you can set it as you prefer. And then upward review, then again, let's do 1 month after launch. When you launch the cycle, one email is going to be sent to everyone who is participating with their respective reviews they have to do. And 1 day before they reach each of their deadlines, they will receive another email. Hey, listen, you haven't completed your form. Please do it. It's due tomorrow. And that's it. In 6 steps, we come to the summary of what we just done. So let's recap quickly. We have the title, we have a description, we can see who's participating, the review types we have chosen, and the respective forms, and of course the due dates correlating to each of them. Then we just launch it. We can save it and close to leave it as a draft and finish up later. And in this case, I'm just gonna go back because otherwise I will have many review cycles at the end of the day. But we'll jump into one so you can see how it looks actually inside when it's launched. And here we have a complete dashboard overview of what the situation is. So then again, you don't have to keep track in Excel and yeah, asking everyone what's the status, what have they done or not. Here you can see whether they have not even touched the form, whether it's done, which would be absolutely good news. If it's in progress, so they already started and save it as a draft. So we have, in this case, only 3 review types: manager, self, and peer review. So the peer review, you can, as a manager, here I'm the CEO, I have the admin rights, so I could actually request peer feedback for any of the employees in the cycle. So that's what you see here. How many people have been submitted. In this case, only 1 out of 3 have already completed the peer review. All right, and that said, if you forgot something, you can always add an employee. If this cycle it's useful and you want to take it as a base, you can duplicate and you don't have to start from 0 for a new one. All right, so let's look how does it look for an employee. So I'll use Alfred Jones. Alfred Jones is the head of customer acquisition. So let's go and enter Personio as if I'm Alfred. As you can see here on my left, already the rights are restricted. So I go to the performance and development, and I'll jump to the cycles. So as you can see, I only have access to one cycle now. And if I jump into this cycle, I can only see my direct reports. So as managers, you can actually shape how they see the information. In this case, Alfred's authorized to see the winter cycle and his team inside of it. And as a manager, then again, he can actually request peer feedback for his team. I'll go back, and now I go to this tab called feedback. And here I have an overview for myself of what's the status of my assigned tasks. So for a better control of what has to be done, there's might be a lot of information coming in. So to have a better control, we have the first what's has been assigned to me. So in this case, I see I have 5 still pending evaluations to do, and what's their respective due dates, so I don't miss any of them. Which ones have I already completed? So for Scarlett, she's in my team, well, in Alfred's team. Alfred have already completed Scarlett Stevens, and Emma Weber, who is the manager of Alfred, has also submitted his evaluation. So as easy as just clicking any of them, I can jump into. Let's see what I've done for Scarlett. It's of course a very basic evaluation, but what it's important here, and it's really nice, is that you can export. So I can download as PDF as normal, but this is super cool feature. You can export this form to a Scarlett's profile. So we don't have to print or send an email, ask to print, and then scanning, upload into Personio. So let's jump into Scarlett and see how it looks once I export. Oops. Once I have exported. So as simple as going to her document tab, a new category will be created. It's called performance. And here you find the documents that have been sent to Scarlett. And if you have the correct rights, you can actually request for a signature. So then again, she doesn't have to print it, sign it, scan it, upload it. All of this comes in together, and it's all wrapped up inside of a Personio. And with that, I would basically have covered all of the performance and development. At the moment, we have a huge team working on this, and there's a really exciting roadmap coming up ahead. So there's a lot of features that will be implementing through the years, and pretty exciting to see it coming.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Felipe. It is so appreciated that you took the time to be here, and also that everyone here took the time to listen. So really appreciate it. Big thank you. And I think it's amazing, especially because of all the best practices that Ruth shared today about having a great conversation, a great performance conversation, and focusing on performance, but also making sure that the administrative element runs just as seamlessly as the actual conversation. That is so important. So if you're interested in learning more, please feel free to book a demo with our team to talk about, how it works, any challenges that you're also facing in other parts of HR or in your role. Otherwise, I will see you off into the rest of Thursday and into a premature weekend. And thank you so much for being here, and talk again real soon. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. There's 3 questions.
Oh, cool.
I don't know if I go ahead and answer them, or how's the time looking?
By all means, it's amazing.
Yeah, okay, perfect. So the first one is it possible to see how the signature feature works? So it's simple. We just click on it. We can actually establish workflows for the signatures. If you need, hey, listen, please, I want in this case, the employee to sign it first, and then the manager. You can set that up before this step. In this case, I'm saying, hey, Scarlett needs to sign this. I'll send an email. And now you always see the status. I get an email, and I go to an environment to sign the document. You get a QR code, so you can just with phone, tablet also, and then you sign with your finger, and then it will show up sign in the profile of the employee in this case. Next question. can you show how to do a feedback form shortly? Sure thing. So we go to settings. And let's go back down to performance. And then here we have form templates. So you only create new form, you set a title, and then you start adding your questions. You select what kind of a question it is, binary, traffic, scale. For example, scale, and here you start creating the template. All right, one more. The cycle you showed is a formal performance review. What about day-to-day feedback? Can you request this via Personio? Yes, you can. Let me go into any profile. So this performance that we have here is going to be moved to this whole new module that I already showed you. But here you can compose feedback. So you create, then again, a template that is called daily feedback, as you wish to call it. And for example, quick feedback. So then again, the employee would receive the feedback, and then you can sign up and just go through it daily. Or you can simply, for example, a performance meeting, schedule a meeting, and here you can add a form. So let's say quick feedback, you send the meeting, so the employee knows for this meeting he has to come prepared with the form. All right. Is customization and all of these features included in the performance management subscription? So it keeps the way the packaging and pricing. I would recommend addressing to your graph manager, but it keeps working the same way as it was before. So for example, to have the unlimited e-signatures, you would need to have the correct add-on to work along. So yeah, my recommendation would be to contact directly your graph manager in this case. And the last one, can you publish the reviews also on Teams? Straight answer, not at the moment. It's already thought of to bring the integrations with Slack and Teams and other platforms, but I cannot give you a concrete dateline. So I would say not at the moment. It's already, the team is aware of it, but I cannot give a exact date for it. All right, I guess we don't have any other.
We're all good. It warms the heart to see how many questions there are. And thank you for tackling all of those. Much appreciated. And thank you to everyone for asking. So thank you again, Felipe. Really appreciate you taking the time to go through, to show us how this works and all that good stuff. And to those of you still here with us, thank you very much. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. And thank you for attending today's webinar. Really appreciate it.
Exactly. Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.